Why is it that we understand English? We know the words, but the moment we try to speak, everything just disappears. It's like the brain just shuts down. Hello, my amazing students, and welcome again to your channel. My name is Clara, and today we're going to talk about something that almost every English learner experiences, but very few people truly understand: the fear of speaking. Not just nervousness, but that moment when you want to speak and something inside you stops you. You open your mouth and nothing comes. Or maybe you start a sentence and suddenly you doubt every word. You slow down. You hesitate. You lose confidence. And after that moment, you tell yourself, I need more vocabulary. I need better grammar. I'm not ready yet. But here's the truth. The problem is not your English. It's your brain. And once you understand what your brain is doing in that moment, everything starts to make sense. Let me explain something simple. Your brain has one main job: protection. Not fluency, not perfection, protection. Whenever your brain feels that something is risky, it activates a response, a very fast response, faster than thinking. And speaking in a second language feels risky, not physically, but socially, emotionally. Because when you speak, you expose yourself. You show your level. You risk making mistakes. You risk being misunderstood. You risk judgment. And your brain sees all of that as danger. So what does it do? It tries to protect you. How? By slowing you down, by making you hesitate, by making you doubt your words. Because from your brain's perspective, silence is safer than embarrassment. Now, this is important. This reaction is not a weakness. It's natural. It happens to everyone. Even advanced learners sometimes feel it. But here's the problem. If you listen to that fear every time, it becomes stronger, because your brain learns from your behavior. If you stay silent, your brain says, good choice. Silence keeps you safe. So next time, it reacts faster, stronger, more hesitation, more doubt, more fear. But if you speak, even a little, even imperfectly, something different happens. Your brain observes, you spoke and nothing bad happened. And slowly, it updates. This is not dangerous. That's how fear decreases, not by thinking, but by experiencing. Now let's go deeper. Why does your mind go blank? Why do you forget words you already know? This is very interesting. When your brain feels pressure, it reduces access to memory because it shifts into survival mode. And survival mode is not designed for communication. It's designed for protection. So even if you know the word, you can't access it. Not because it's not there, but because your brain is blocking access. That's why later, when you're relaxed, the sentence comes easily, because the pressure is gone. Now here's the key insight. Fluency is not just about knowledge. It's about access to knowledge, and fear blocks access. That's why you can understand English very well, but still struggle to speak, because understanding happens in calm conditions, but speaking happens in real-time pressure. Now let's bring this back to you. If you feel afraid to speak, you're not alone, and you're not behind. You're just experiencing a natural brain reaction. The problem is not that you're not ready. The problem is that your brain is trying to protect you too much. And the only way to change that is not by learning more grammar, not by waiting, but by gently showing your brain that speaking is safe, step by step, sentence by sentence, without pressure, without perfection. Because fear doesn't disappear through thinking. It disappears through action, repeated action, calm action. And that's what we're going to build. There's a moment that happens very fast, but it changes everything. You're about to speak. You have an idea. A sentence is almost ready. And then your brain interrupts. Not loudly, but quietly. Wait, is this correct? Should I say it like this? Maybe I should change the sentence. And just like that, your flow breaks. Not because you didn't know what to say, but because you tried to control it too much. This is overthinking. And overthinking doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like you're being careful, like you're trying to do things the right way. But in reality, it's the opposite. Overthinking disconnects you from natural speech, because natural speech is fast. It's not perfect. It's not planned word by word. It's based on familiarity, patterns, reactions. But overthinking replaces reaction with analysis, and analysis is slow. Let me explain it differently. When you speak your native language, do you check grammar before every sentence? No, you just speak, because your brain recognizes patterns instantly. But in English, you don't trust your patterns yet. So you try to control every sentence, and that control creates tension. Now here's the interesting part. Your brain can't do two things at the same time. It can't analyze deeply and speak fluently. You either speak or you analyze. So when you try to do both, you slow down, you hesitate, you lose flow. That's why people who know more grammar sometimes speak worse, because they're thinking more, not speaking more. Now let's look at something very real. Imagine someone asks you, "What did you do today?" You know how to answer, but your brain starts checking. Past tense, okay, I need past tense. Is it I go or I went? Should I say I have gone? And while you're thinking, the conversation is already moving. So what happens? You either say nothing, or you say something very small, or you lose confidence. Now imagine a different approach. You don't aim for perfect grammar. You aim for clear communication. I went to work. I stayed home. I watched something. Simple, but effective. And most importantly, fast. Because speed creates confidence, and confidence improves performance. Now here's something most learners don't realize. Overthinking is not about English. It's about control. Your brain wants to avoid mistakes, so it slows you down. But mistakes are part of the process. You can't remove them. You can only move through them. So instead of trying to control every sentence, you need to train your brain to trust simple patterns. And this is where repetition comes back. The more you repeat natural sentences, the less you need to think, because your brain recognizes the structure instantly. You don't need to build the sentence, you recall it. And recalling is faster than constructing. Now let's make this practical. Next time you speak, don't aim for the best sentence. Aim for the first clear sentence. Not perfect, not complex, just clear. That's enough. And here's something very powerful. When you keep speaking without stopping, even with small mistakes, your brain stays in flow mode, and flow reduces fear. But when you stop constantly to correct yourself, you break the flow, and breaking the flow increases anxiety. So movement matters more than perfection. Let me give you a small trick. When you feel stuck, keep your voice moving. Even if you say, I think maybe it was good. That's okay, because you're staying in the conversation. and staying in the conversation is the goal, not sounding perfect. Now let's go deeper. Why does overthinking feel so strong? Because your brain is trying to protect your identity. It doesn't want you to look less capable. But here's the reality. You are not less capable. You are just learning a new system. And that system needs time to become automatic. So instead of asking, "Is this sentence correct?" ask, "Is this sentence understandable?" That shift changes your focus from perfection to communication, and communication builds fluency. Now imagine this. You speak more, you stop less, you accept small mistakes. After a few days, nothing dramatic. After a few weeks, something changes. You hesitate less, you think less, you react faster. Not because you improved suddenly, but because you reduced overthinking. And reduced overthinking creates space for fluency. So if you feel blocked when speaking, it's not because you don't know enough, it's because you're trying to control too much, and control slows you down. Let it go. Speak simply, stay in motion, and let your brain adapt, because fluency grows in movement, not in perfect thinking. Let's step away from big conversations for a moment, because here's something most learners believe. If I want to improve my speaking, I need long conversations. It sounds logical. More talking equals more progress. But in reality, that's not how your brain builds confidence. Your brain doesn't grow through intensity. It grows through repetition in low-pressure moments. And this is where most people get it wrong. They wait for big opportunities to speak, a full conversation, a language partner, a perfect situation. And when that moment comes, it feels heavy, too much pressure, too many expectations. So they hesitate again. But what if the real progress doesn't come from big conversations? What if it comes from small moments? Let me explain. Imagine two learners. The first one speaks once a week for 1 hour. The second one speaks for 1 or 2 minutes every day. Which one improves faster? The second one, always, because frequency beats intensity. Now here's why this matters. Your brain builds comfort through repetition of experience, not duration. So if you speak every day, even briefly, your brain starts recognizing speaking as something normal, not something rare. And normal things don't create fear. But if you only speak occasionally, every speaking moment feels like a performance, and performance creates pressure. Now think about your daily life. There are many small opportunities to speak. You just don't notice them. Talking to yourself, describing what you're doing, reacting to something you see, saying one sentence out loud. These are small actions, but they are powerful because they remove pressure. You're not trying to impress anyone, you're just activating your speaking ability, and activation builds familiarity. Now here's something interesting. When you practice in small moments, you don't feel fear because the situation is safe. And when something feels safe, your brain learns faster. That's why children learn language so quickly. They are not performing. They are just using language in small, natural situations. No pressure, no judgment, just repetition. Now let's connect this to your situation. If speaking feels difficult, it's not because you need more knowledge. It's because your brain is not used to frequent activation. So when you try to speak, it feels new, and new feels uncomfortable. But when you activate speaking every day, even for 30 seconds, your brain adapts, and adaptation reduces fear. Now let's make this very practical. You don't need to wait for a conversation. You create your own. For example, you're walking. You say, "I'm going to the store." You're thinking about your day. You say, "I need to finish my work later." You watch something. You react, "That's interesting." These are simple sentences, but they train your brain to connect thoughts with English. And that connection becomes automatic over time. Now here's the important part. These small moments are not preparation. They are progress. Many learners think, "I'll practice alone, then I'll be ready to speak." But you're already speaking. You're already building fluency, step by step. Now imagine doing this every day. Small sentences, no pressure, no perfection. After a few weeks, something changes. You don't feel that same fear anymore because speaking is no longer rare. It's part of your routine, and routine creates comfort. Now let's look at something deeper. Big conversations are still important, yes, but they should come after you build familiarity, not before. Because if you jump into big conversations too early, you overwhelm your brain. But if you build small daily speaking habits first, you enter conversations with more confidence, more readiness, more stability, and that changes everything. Now imagine this. You've been speaking daily, even just a little. Then you enter a real conversation, and instead of freezing, you respond. Maybe not perfectly, but naturally, because your brain has practiced that action many times. That's how fluency grows, not in big moments, but in small, repeated ones. So stop waiting for the perfect situation. Start using the small ones, because small moments build big confidence. Let's talk about safety. Not physical safety, but psychological safety. Because your brain doesn't ask, "Is your English good enough?" It asks, "Am I safe to speak right now?" And if the answer is no, it blocks you. It slows you down. It makes you hesitate. So the real goal is not, "How do I speak better?" The real goal is, "How do I make my brain feel safe while speaking?" Now, here's something important. Your brain doesn't understand logic. It understands experience. You can tell yourself, "It's okay to make mistakes." But if your past experiences were stressful, your brain won't believe you. It will react based on what it remembers. So if every time you speak, you feel pressure, your brain learns speaking equals stress, and it protects you. But if you create calm speaking experiences, your brain learns something different. Speaking equals safe. And that's what we need to build. Now, let's start simple. The safest environment is speaking alone. No judgment, no pressure, no audience, just you. This is where you retrain your brain. You speak. Nothing bad happens. You repeat. Nothing bad happens. And slowly, your brain updates. This is okay. Now after that, you move to low-pressure situations. Not big conversations, not stressful environments. Simple interactions, short exchanges, supportive people. Because your brain needs gradual exposure, not sudden pressure. Now here's something very powerful. Your brain learns through repetition of experience. Not one moment, not one conversation, but many small ones. So instead of trying to be confident in one big moment, you build confidence across many small, safe moments. That's how fear disappears. Not by forcing yourself, but by reducing the perceived danger. Now let's go deeper. There's something called prediction. Your brain is always predicting what will happen. If you think, "I will make a mistake," your brain prepares for stress. If you think, "It's okay, I'll just try. Your brain relaxes slightly, so your thoughts influence your emotional state, and your emotional state affects your speaking. Now, I'm not saying, just think positive. That's too simple. What I'm saying is, combine thought with experience. Tell yourself, I don't need to be perfect. Then act. Say a sentence. See that nothing bad happens. Now your brain has proof, and proof is stronger than motivation. Now let's look at something real. Why do you feel more comfortable speaking with some people than others? Because your brain feels safer. It's not about your English, it's about the environment. So instead of forcing yourself into stressful situations, choose better environments, supportive people, relaxed conversations, places where communication matters more than correctness, because safety builds confidence faster than pressure. Now here's something else. Your body also reacts. When you feel nervous, your breathing changes, your heart rate increases, your voice becomes tight, and this affects your speaking. So one simple thing can help. Slow down your breathing before speaking. Take a small pause. Relax your body. Because a relaxed body sends a signal to your brain. This is safe. And when your brain feels safe, it allows access to language. Now imagine this. You speak regularly in safe environments. You build small, positive experiences. Your brain starts expecting speaking is okay. So when you enter a real conversation, you don't feel the same fear, because your brain has learned something new. And that's the goal. Not removing fear completely, but reducing it enough so you can act. Because action is what builds fluency. Now let's bring everything together. Your brain doesn't block you because your English is bad. It blocks you because it feels unsafe. So your job is not to force speaking, but to create safe speaking experiences, again and again, until your brain adapts. And once it adapts, speaking becomes natural. Not forced, not stressful, just normal. There's something very simple, but very powerful that I want you to remember. You don't need to remove fear to start speaking. You just need to speak while fear is still there. Because most people are waiting for the wrong moment. They're waiting for confidence, for comfort, for that feeling of, okay, now I'm ready. But that moment doesn't come first. It comes after. After you speak, after you try, after you go through a few uncomfortable moments. Confidence is not the beginning, it's the result. Now let's be honest, you will feel uncomfortable sometimes. Your voice might not feel natural. You might pause. You might say something wrong. And that's okay, because that's part of the process, not something to avoid, something to go through. Now think about this. Every time you choose silence, you strengthen the fear. Every time you choose to speak, even a little, you weaken it. That's the real game. Not perfection, not grammar, just choice. Speak or stay silent. And that choice, repeated daily, builds your future. Now imagine two paths. In the first path, you keep waiting, waiting to be ready, waiting to be confident, waiting to be perfect. And months pass, but nothing really changes. In the second path, you speak. Small sentences, imperfect words, simple ideas, but you keep going. And after a few weeks, something shifts. You don't feel as blocked. You don't hesitate as much. You don't overthink every word. Not because you became perfect, but because you became familiar. Familiar with your voice in English. familiar with mistakes, familiar with continuing anyway. And that familiarity becomes confidence, real confidence, not something you force, something you build. Now here's something deeper. Fluency is not about sounding perfect. It's about being able to express yourself, even when it's not perfect. Because communication is not about perfection. It's about connection. If someone understands your idea, you succeeded, even if your sentence wasn't perfect. So give yourself permission. Permission to speak simply. Permission to make mistakes. Permission to be in the process. Because that's where growth happens. Now let's go one step further. You are not just learning English. You are becoming someone who speaks English, and that identity is built through action. Not through thinking, not through waiting, through doing. Every time you speak, you reinforce that identity. I am someone who speaks. Even if it's small, even if it's simple, it counts. Now, imagine yourself a few months from now. You've been speaking regularly, you've accepted imperfection, you've reduced fear, and suddenly, speaking feels different. Not easy, but easier. Not perfect, but natural. You respond faster, you think less, you stay in the conversation, and you realize something. You didn't become fluent because you removed fear. You became fluent because you stopped letting fear stop you. That's the shift. Now let me leave you with something simple. Next time you feel that hesitation, that moment where your brain says, "Don't speak," pause and do the opposite. Say one sentence. That's enough. Because one sentence is action. And action builds confidence. Confidence builds fluency. And fluency builds freedom. So don't wait. Don't overthink. Don't try to be perfect. Just speak and let your brain catch up.